I am so excited to welcome you, Bridget, to the show. Welcome.
Hi, Dr. Renee. Glad to be here.
And, we talked a lot before I hit the record button, maybe a little too much, but I should have hit the record button sooner. But you have such a great, background, and what you're doing now is amazing. And you have a new book. Like, there's just going to be so much for us to dive into around the topic of mold, which is a topic that I have not talked much about in this 100 and what 22 episodes now. Like maybe we touched
Nice.
on it, yes, once or twice, maybe, and dipped our toe in the water, not a full on episode. So this is going to be an incredible episode. But before we get into it, tell the audience who you are and how you got doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Bridgit Danner, and I live in Arizona. I actually have a little different story than some people about how I got into natural medicine, but it's kind of a cool full circle story at this point. So, I got into it because I was an environmentalist from a young age, and I wanted to do something that would like raise awareness for people about the environment. I looked into being like an environmental attorney. I looked into different things, but I ended up going natural medicine route because it's something I enjoyed already in my life. Um, and I became a licensed acupuncturist. I moved to Portland, Oregon. I started my practice, and I think I probably had some issues with the climate right away, but it wasn't till about 4 years in I moved into a moldy home without knowing it. And I got sick. I stayed sick for a lot of years, but because I had also started a practice, had a baby, like I didn't really know what the source was. And often, Renee, I was just told when I would go in, well, like it's your stress, because they couldn't find anything else, right? So they just blame it on me pretty much. Um, but yeah, I was, dealing with gut issues, anxiety, insomnia, breakthrough bleeding in my cycle. So a lot of things that do cross over, chronic pain in my back. And I started to study functional medicine on top of Chinese medicine really because of these issues and trying to find answers. And it would work somewhat, definitely improving my diet. Some things I did helped. I did get a diagnosis of Epstein-Barr in there, so that kind of helped. So, but then probably every winter is when I'd really backslide again when things were wet. And then one winter I got strep throat. I had to take antibiotics for the first time in 20 years. I just didn't recover from that. I was just bone tired. I did a detox. I was doing IV therapy. Nothing was changing it. I had just started to work from home around then too. So not really a coincidence. And somebody asked me in a naturopathic clinic, what has changed in your environment? And that was the first time that the conversation of possible mold came up, because we did have this kind of damp, smelly basement that had had some water intrusion recently, but had always been kind of damp and smelly. So that's the first time we tested. I think that was about 6 years ago now, and found out we had pretty extensive mold problems in the home. And we made a lot of mistakes in how we repaired the home, so I got sicker. So this is a long answer, but I
No.
think it's a good background. And ironically, like now I really specialize in detox and mold. I did work in women's health for a long time, really, Renee, because like those years that I had a baby and my periods were off, I kind of thought it was like a women's health issue.
Mm.
So I wanted to help other women in that state. But honestly, I had a mold issue that whole time, and it affected my hormones. It's not really given much credit for how much it affects your hormones. So, yeah, it's been interesting to see the trajectory. It almost like brought me back to the environmental side of things. It's definitely an environmental illness. And I'm happy to be able to help with like such a specific topic that's still pretty underserved.
I agree. I mean, no one thinks of mold. When we think of mold, we think of the stuff that grows on that stuff, that food in the back of the fridge. That's what
Yeah,
people think mold is. Like they don't understand that
that
there's
is
mold.
mold.
That is mold as well, but that's like you say mold, that's what people, I think the general public think of. They don't even know that you can actually have a physical health condition related to mold. So, what is toxic mold for those that don't know?
Yeah, so there are hundreds, maybe thousands of species of molds, probably thousands. I probably have it in my book and I forget already. But there's actually only about 13 that are toxic. So when they go through their life cycle, they put out some toxic metabolites. And one of those are mycotoxins that you hear about. It's like a mold toxin, but they also put out other like cell fragments, VOCs. So they sort of just dump this pollution of sorts into the air. There are other molds. So basically, they come in your home when your home is too humid or water damaged. So it's water eating away at drywall or wood or what have you for too long. That can only happen for a quick amount of time before it becomes a problem. So I would learn recently from an expert, like there'll be cycles of mold. Like there's the first cycle that comes in when there's wetness, and then a second and a third. And he was saying the third group has like the toxic strains. So he was really saying like, don't worry too much on the strains. It's kind of like functional medicine. It's like, don't worry too much on the symptoms, like look for the root. And in a home, the root is the water damage or the humidity or whatever's going on. So I do focus a lot in the book on the toxic strains because of the way they affect the body so intensely. But in any chronic water damage situation, there's probably going to be lots of players, kind of ones growing here. They have life cycles. So over time, the players will change. So it's just one little kind of thing to know about that. Yeah, I think the toxic molds are the most dangerous, but there are also allergenic molds and just kind of like irritating molds, just depending on the moment in time.
Got it. Wow. So if you would you recommend those that have had water damage in their house get the area? Because I have it, my kids' bathtub flooded, and all of a sudden I'm looking at my kitchen, here comes water through the ceiling, right? So like, is there mold in there potentially that could be harming us, a closed space between two levels?
Did you repair it?
Nope.
It's a good thing we're having this talk, Renee.
I know. I'm like, it's one of those things, you're like, things that make you go, I'm like, oh yeah, it's been, we have damage on the ceiling in the kitchen because of that leak. And so, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so public service announcement, anytime you have a water emergency, you need someone to come out and get it fixed within 48 hours. Because if it's not within 48 hours, that's long enough that molds can develop. And then you've got, it sounds like a trapped space between these floors. It's a great little environment for mold to grow, unfortunately.
I'm going to have my husband listen to this episode when I tell him, honey, we have to rip open that ceiling and see what's up there. Not me, of course, but I'll just refer to this episode and then I'll send him your way.
Yeah. So, I can't say for sure, that may have dried quickly and that kind of a thing. And some of the home questions are a little tougher for me to answer than some of my friends in the space. But yeah, that should have been, any affected materials should be dried or cut out within 48 hours. So this is actually an interesting question because it's like, is this one episode enough that it's a chronic mold problem and affecting your health? I think it could be. So you could have an inspector come out. They can actually drill a hole through and take a sample, so you don't have to rip it up right away. Yeah, it gets expensive, frankly, every time you're.
Well, and I think that makes me feel better that let's look first. Cause like you said, maybe it dried quick enough, which it was a big leak. It was a big leak. Like it was not pretty. It was not good. But, yeah, to see what's up there. And that makes it a little more like, if there is obviously something up there, which it probably is, it will be more of I don't know, a heck yes, just do this. So no one, we don't have a problem, and anyone else living in our house in the future doesn't have a problem from this, what we know happened a year ago.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to get across, and I'm thankful for people who listen out of just curiosity without thinking they have a mold problem, is like, just learn how to take care of your house better.
Yeah.
It's really important. I didn't know these things either. I made a ton of mistakes. I thought like having a house was like about decorating. That was it. But there's a lot, just like you take good care of your body and you invest your time to listen to podcasts like this, you need to take good care of your home. You live in it. So anything going on in it, whether it's like chemicals off-gassing or mold in the home, dust mites, whatever, that's affecting you. So just being a good steward of your home is like my new my new public service announcement.
I love that. I love that. And it's getting the listeners to think beyond the mold issue, right? So like mold makes seem very intimidating and scary. Maybe they don't have a problem, but there's other issues that you can look at to make sure that you have a healthy environment that you're living in. So now, is everyone going to get sick from getting exposed to mold?
No. So it depends. I think the extent of the mold, like we talked
Mhm.
about, yours could be more of a minor thing. Maybe it's so small and somewhat contained, although it can pass through walls. The toxins can pass through. That maybe you guys are not being affected. And so it depends on like age, genetics, your health history, other exposures in the home, other exposures in your life. Um, and then I think, yeah, the extent of the length and depth of the exposure that you're having.
Is this something that someone should look into or consider thinking about if they have unresolved health conditions like you had? Like you did your functional medicine training, you were doing everything on yourself, but it just wasn't, you're better, but you're not, you still had symptoms. Is this something that just,
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%. This is also one of my biggest like slogans is like if you're doing all the right things and it's not working, please look for toxins. It could be mold, it could be something else, but
Mhm.
your body is supposed to work pretty well. There
Mhm.
are things that are I mean, I'm 47 and like having perimenopause, like there are things that are challenging,
Mhm.
but your body should work pretty well. You shouldn't be dragging yourself around every day because
Mhm.
you're so tired. You shouldn't like have an extra 40 pounds even though you eat right. So yeah, unresolved symptoms, I think often mold is there as a cause. And I'm hearing it from other practitioners too. Like people in the Lyme community pretty much always find out they had a mold issue also.
Mhm.
So it just weakens your immune system. That's something I didn't mention in my own symptoms that I got, like colds and flus, colds and flus, colds and flus all the time. And then I got a strep throat, and then I got a UTI. Like that was immune depression. And it can be hormonal stuff too. So, yeah, any unresolved symptom when you're trying to eat right and get to bed on time and you cut down on drinking and you did all these things, nothing's changing. Yeah, dig deeper, work with Renee, come to us for some more mold education because you can go on, right? If you're in the same home,
Mhm.
it could be other places in your home too, but home is most frequent. And you're just really getting worse, which is what happened for me.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what are the most common symptoms? Like, what do you see mostly in the clients you work with? I know
I
you had your
personally
personal.
think, yeah, I think the top two are brain fog and fatigue. I think those are the top two. And then, those do overlap with other conditions. And then from there, I think I have a list of 50 things in my
Mhm.
book. There probably are 100. But I think those are the most common. But, it can also be like skin rashes, ADHD in kids, mood disorders. It can be lots of things, but I see that kind of because it affects the mitochondria of your cells and potentially your thyroid too. It's just like slowing you down, and
Mhm.
you're thinking slower, you're moving slower, and again, you're just kind of being in that deep chronic fatigue is not normal either.
Wow.
Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I think usually both your thyroid and your cells are affected if you've been in
Mhm.
toxic mold for a while.
Got it. And now coming off the pandemic and post COVID, symptoms of fatigue.
Yeah,
We're
I
giving our
just had
listeners a lot to
somebody.
think about.
Yeah, I just had somebody Instagram me and they were like, "What if like how do I treat like mold and long COVID at the same time?" I haven't really studied long haul COVID that much, but some things I've heard, it seems like there's chronic inflammation and brain inflammation, which also happens in mold. So I think there is some interesting crossover that could be interesting for people who are experiencing that.
And I'm sure it's going to also factor in mitochondrial issues. So I think you'll see a lot
Mm,
of cross. And I don't
interesting.
know. I don't know
Yeah.
for sure. I don't also study long COVID, so I don't know. But, I just think fatigue, mitochondria, and so many things can affect those little energy powerhouses. So
Yeah.
now, how do we test for it?
Well, that's become pretty easy in the body. It's just a urine test. It's an at-home test. The company we work with, you do have to go through a practitioner, but there's another company, I think you can order directly. That's Vibrant Wellness Labs.
Hmm.
We use Great Plains Labs because we like the way the tests can be paired up with other things. Testing the home is a little bit more complicated of a question because do you rent or do you own? Is it a small thing? Is it a big thing? So there's a lot more options for home testing than body testing. Um, and it might be easier just if people want to refer to, we have like a free ebook on mold and stuff. So, because there are a lot of things to think about, but the body is pretty straightforward, luckily.
And I have to just add a little caveat that Great Plains is not tested in New York. I don't believe. I don't believe New Yorkers can be tested. So if you're in New York, what was the other company? Vibrant Health?
Vibrant Wellness, I think it's
Wellness.
called. Yeah,
They may not either because New York is just
we do a little workaround.
I know that workaround, but
Yeah, I
just heads
know.
up.
It's true. It's not in every state.
It's not in most
However,
states.
I do believe in testing.
Mhm.
However, you know, I also grew up on Chinese medicine that didn't isn't really based on testing. And you don't have to necessarily test your mycotoxins to know that you're sick and there's a problem where you're living and to take action and see yourself get better. We can also sort of do it the old fashioned way potentially. So, it kind of like I mentioned about the strains. I am a fan of testing, but let's not get too caught up in the bells and whistles of like how to treat and how to test, because a lot of detox techniques are pretty global and they'll detox you from a lot of things. I actually never got a baseline test when I was at my sickest. My ex-husband did because we were trying to get him a leave from work. But even then, like testing was more expensive.
Mhm.
So I wish I had gotten a baseline test, to be honest. But I was like, well, we know we're sick and you've got it and we've tested the house. Like, it's just like 1 + 1 = 2 here. Like, we don't need to like overthink it. I did test much later on, like 2 years later.
Mhm.
So yeah, I wasn't even a good tester, but I was a good detoxer, and I did all the things to work on my health.
Got it. Yeah. So I'm going to consider that test myself in the workaround. Um, so how does mold? I'm in the field of women's health, and I have a lot of women that come to me with what they think are hormonal issues. How does mold affect specifically female and male hormones? Let's talk about all of them. I just put the reproductive hormones in a basket.
Yeah, yeah, I'm kind of like spewing out my top five, I think, ways that it affects it. So one thing I think is super interesting is the biggest way you're taking in mycotoxins is you're inhaling them.
Mhm.
So they're coming in through your nose and getting, the information is being processed right there in like the olfactory center and the limbic system, and the brain. And what else is right there is your hypothalamus pituitary
Mhm.
axis. So when I first read, I think I read this a couple years ago, that mycotoxins inflame that center. I'm like, wow, they just directly inflame that center. So you can have, you're going to have dysregulated hormones from that if that center is affected. So when I tested my hormones, which I did even before mold, like they were just really, really low. And again, what would people tell me, Dr. Renee? Looks like you're stressed. It's
Yeah.
like, it's on you again. It's like,
Yeah.
that's why I had breakthrough bleeding every cycle. So that's one way. Also, some mycotoxins are estrogenic, just like some chemicals are estrogenic, right? That's the effect on the body.
Mhm.
So you can have like a hyper estrogen dominance situation.
Mhm.
It also really affects your microbiome in the gut. where you need to be detoxing used hormones. So if that's all messed up, you're not going to detox used hormones. It burdens the liver and actually like affects liver cells' ability to do their job. So now it's like directly affecting your ability to detox used hormones and other chemicals. So that's going to affect things. And then it's inflaming cells like their cell membrane. So then now maybe hormone signals are not getting into the cell. And then it can also affect your weight. It can affect your ability to feel full. You're going to be maybe eating more carbs for energy. I know I was doing that. And plus, your body's looking for a place to store toxins. And again, if it's your genetic type, you're going to just put on 40 pounds, and that's making more estrogen for you now too. So it can really get you in quite the state. So for men, it could be, well, for men or women, it can be low testosterone. For men or women, it could be high estrogen. For men or women, it can be just depressed hormone levels, which can manifest, in lots of different ways. So sex drive, erectile dysfunction, weight gain, PMS, fertility issues for sure. We talked about mitochondria, and those are really important for fertility. So if you're, getting if you're a male, you're getting low testosterone, plus your mitochondria is being affected. I have to look up and see. I haven't seen I haven't looked at a study for fertility and mycotoxins, but I will tell you that a lot of the research has predated the human conversation by looking at animal husbandry, because animals are eating moldy grain and then they have trouble reproducing or they get sick and die. So this has been something that's been studied. So I think it has been an issue in infertility in animals. I have to, and I know for humans, I've seen like mycotoxins can, I better not quote this because I better double check it. But there is like some in vitro effects from it as well that I should probably double check. I would like to delve into the fertility piece a little deeper, because that's actually a specialty I worked in for some years. And again, you can just suffer for so long, right? Not knowing you have this problem. It's so heartbreaking to not be able to get pregnant.
Imagine how many women you'll help. I mean, the infertility rate is super high. I mean, it was always high when I was in OBGYN. I feel like it's getting even higher from everything, including toxins. But like just putting mold on the map when it comes to infertility would be huge, because if that's one of the toxins that they're heavily burdened with, wow, like give them their fertility back by helping them remove the toxin.
It's
The mold.
so interesting. Yeah. And again, like it's so ironic that I got into women's health thinking, okay, I guess I have a women's health issue. And I probably really just had a mold issue. Not only, I did have stress.
Yeah.
I did have some other, but really like you cannot get it back. I'm actually lucky that I conceived my son really quickly from moving into that house. I don't think it was so much in my body yet. And I would just wonder how that would have gone if I had waited to conceive another couple of years.
Yeah. I just had a question go in and out. Oh, stress. It does not necessarily stress. I thought of stress and then I thought of anxiety, because I have a lot of women in my community that deal with anxiety. Does mold worsen anxiety?
Yeah, it's so a couple ways. Again, that limbic system, it's processing like a little invisible enemy. So it can be, firing the limbic system to kind of respond, and you don't even know what you're responding to. It can also break down and cross the blood-brain barrier. It's like very potent. And then within the brain, it can inflame or shrink different areas of the brain. So depending on which you're getting like a hyper response or a lack of response. And then the adrenals can go either way too. Like they can be just sort of depressed in their activity, or they can be really stimulated. So you're in fight or flight. And again, I could probably come up with like 20 more ways that, autoimmune thyroid could be going on too. So that just recently for me, a light bulb went off because I feel like I was anxious, throughout the whole mold thing, maybe it's a bit of my nature, but it was just really like exaggerated. And just recently I interviewed a physician who's done a lot of brain scans with mold, and her really explaining what happens in the limbic system, what happens in the brain. I just like had so much sympathy for myself
Mhm.
because I was like so hard on myself for so long about it's like, why can't you be stronger? Like, why are you so anxious? You know, of course, that doesn't help to think that way. Um, and now I'm like, oh, how could I not have been, you
Mhm.
know, anxious? Like,
Yeah.
all these things weren't just in my imagination. You know, my limbic system was just like firing and pinging. I was in fight or flight for so long. And unfortunately, that's also a state our culture has come to kind of accept as normal.
Mhm.
So we don't even think like that there's a real cause behind it. So it's pretty scary stuff.
Yeah. And, I just want to put on the radar of the listeners that, like we said, with weight management, I'm doing all the right things. I'm eating all the right foods. Why can't I lose weight? Same with anxiety. I have a lot of women say, I feel like I'm doing everything that I can do. I'm meditating and I'm breathing and I'm, making sure my gut health is optimized and I'm eating well and I'm cutting down the caffeine, like all the things that they quote unquote should be doing, but they still have anxiety. It's like, maybe mold, like just again, put it on their radar, like this could, because we're not talking about it. No one's talking about mold. So
No,
everyone's
no.
talking about all those other things that help with anxiety, just not mold.
Yeah, and do all the other things. Like
Yeah.
I love all the other things. I have a million coaches and essential oils and but I think that stuff is starting to finally work for me
Yeah.
also because I'm out of all that
The fight or flight.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you healed from the mold, so it does now work. But the point is, like, if you feel like you're doing all the things, and just keep questioning until you feel good, feel amazing, right? Like, why is it still not everything? Like you're
Yeah.
stacking the blocks, you're getting it right, but maybe there's that icing on the cake, could be the mold. Um, so how do you heal from it? Like where do you even begin? Because now we've given the listeners like the symptoms and how to test for it and how it affects you, but like now they're like, okay, so what if I have it? What am I looking for as far as a healing process, a healing journey?
Yeah, so definitely you can't continue to be exposed to the mold. And that's a huge discussion because everyone's situation is a little different. It could go from is maybe as simple as paying a person to responsibly fix a little area of your bathroom with air scrubber and tenting and stuff, all the way till you're moving out, you're getting rid of all your things, you're living like off the land for a few months. Like there's a whole spectrum of things depending on how sick you are and what your body seems to respond to. But that's just an important piece we'll kind of put to the side and people can research because my piece is more around health. So I kind of outline like first make sure you're doing all the foundational things, eating real food, getting fresh air and sunlight, moving your body, getting a good night's sleep, pooping. So I have like a whole list of those things and this like work on any of those that are off and then you can begin detoxifying. Part of that is taking foundational supplements for me, so fish oil and magnesium and stuff like that. And then once you've graduated from that, you're sort of ready to detox.
Mhm.
You can start doing things like sauna, dry brushing to start moving the toxins that are kind of hanging out in your lymph. That worked. Those kind of techniques work amazing for me. I would
Mhm.
immediately start to feel better. And then there's supplement piece too. Everybody can tolerate different things, but for supplements, a binder is probably something you're going to hear about the most in the mold space. That helps bind toxins in the stool so they're pooped out instead of recycled back in the bile. Electrolytes I like because you're usually peeing more when you have mold. Plus, I hope you're using a sauna. Broccoli seed and sprout helps a certain pathway of liver detox that is for mycotoxins. CoQ10 is for that cellular energy we talked about. And then glutathione is an antioxidant. It's going to be usually depleted in mold exposure that you want high. So supplementing with that as tolerated, those are sort of my top favorites.
I love that. And I'm a big proponent of the Epsom salt baths. What do you think of those?
Yeah, that made my top five as well. So easy to do,
Mhm.
calming for your body, plus gives you sulfur and magnesium for your liver. And you can put essential oils in there and stuff. You need to be calm to heal.
Mhm.
And that's a discussion that I just did this mold masterclass, really came up a lot. Like, maybe before we even get into treatment, we work on calming the limbic system. Super
Hmm.
interesting, because to be able to take in the treatment and heal, you can't be like, "Meh," just your body, that can be a hindrance to healing. I think luckily for me, I take supplements generally quite well, but not everyone's like that.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, Epsom salt baths can be just a simple thing to do. It's safe to do every day if you want to just calm the body.
I love that. So, what I'm kind of hearing is like try to get your body as healthy as you can be before you start working extensively on getting the mold out. Is that what I'm hearing? Like try to start working on your
Yes.
diet and get your sleep and hydrate and move your body a little. And then the supplement piece. I think what I've seen in the past with people taking supplements, like if they are really inflamed or really stressed, like they just don't have the energy in the body to process the supplements. Like it takes energy to use these supplements, and people don't understand that. Like your body has to be in the recovery mode, not still getting down the slippery slope of getting ill mode before you can actually effectively not only utilize the supplements but feel well while you're taking them, because there'd be a lot of people used to take them and they just would feel worse.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think it's
it's so true. I mean, we want to, it's sort of our culture, like we want to cut to the chase. We want all the sexy supplements, but
Mhm.
sometimes you just have to do that basic stuff first, or you're not going to react well to the supplements. Or if you're, like you're not pooping, you're not sleeping, you're not gonna feel well, no
Mhm.
matter what you do. So, yeah, getting those basics down, it's maybe less exciting or whatever, but they can help a lot. I have a friend who was a physician and experienced mold, and she was a traditional. She was an OBGYN like you, and she wasn't in the world of health like lifestyle. So one of her first steps was just taking basic supplements and eating better, and that was like a huge needle mover for her. So I kind of did all those things while still exposed to mold. So it probably did help me in a sense. Like some people are literally in a wheelchair. So I was
Mhm.
at least functioning. I wasn't
Mhm.
functioning awesome, but I was functioning. It probably had a lot to do with, I was literally making my own bone broth. I was just like going for it,
Mhm.
So it probably did help me. It just, again, wasn't going to help me while I was still in the mold. And then another question I get is like, do I really have to do all these things to detox once I'm out of mold? Usually, yes. Just because of the bile recycling, the binders really help. I think for some people, yeah, just like getting out in nature, like simplifying your life can be enough to heal. But your body systems, if you've been exposed for years, have really gone downhill. Like I started taking exogenous hormones. I had already been out of mold like a couple years, but I just couldn't make hormones again. I was stuck.
Mhm.
So it often takes some intervention, like lots of intervention on various systems to
Mhm.
get them online again.
And I'm also hearing it's not an overnight fix. Is that correct? I mean,
No.
what I always say, you didn't get here overnight. You're not going to get better overnight. Like you're in it. It's a marathon. Like little by little, consistency, one foot in front of the other, one thing at a time, and eventually you get through it. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I really stress that because I was a practitioner with so many resources at my fingertips, and it still took me a very, very long time. But you're right, I was in that moldy house like 8, 9 years. So is it going to take me like 3 months to get better? No.
Hmm.
It broke me down for a long time and takes a long time to crawl out of it. But you're making advances
Hmm.
all along.
Yep.
That's the good part.
Well, and I think like your friend, and I see this so often that once you start getting that needle moving, like eating a little bit better, a few key supplements, like that will keep you going. Cause I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something. I'm starting to feel a little bit better. I'm starting to come out of the fog, right? Like
Yes.
that will just keep you going. So you do that next step. So we've
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
we've covered a lot. We covered a lot, and I'm so excited because I mean, I think this gives everyone an overview of mold and like what it is and how to test for it and treat it and all the things. But you have a book, which is an amazing resource. We were talking before I hit record, like I was going through it and I was kind of like, oh no, another book I'm gonna buy.
Well, I'm going to send it to you. So tell your
Okay.
husband you're at least going to save 20 bucks.
The funny thing is, my husband just said 2 days ago that, I have so many books and I have so many amazing friends and podcast guests that wrote books that I want to get after, especially after speaking with them. And so he calls me a pack rat because I keep them all. I'm like, you never know when you're going to need this
Keep them.
information.
Unless they're moldy, then you have to throw them out.
Well, and especially yours, because like we were saying, it's a guide. It's the ultimate toxic mold recovery guide. Is that correct? That's
Yeah, I have the actual book downstairs, but I have a picture of it up here. It looks like this. Whoop.
yeah, I love it. And
Yeah.
I think, you know, it serves as a great, it's a guide, it's a resource. It's like, it's not like something I tell my husband I get rid of. Like I have to keep it because, like you said, it's steps. You have to go through it. And it's not like you're going to binge and read it all in one sitting and do all the things. There's a lot in there for different steps in different areas of your life. So I think it's an amazing resource, Bridget. Thank you for writing it.
Aw,
And
thank you. Yeah, I honestly feel like it's the first book quite like it out, which is really showing this field is still so emerging. And there are other great mold books, but I really cover everything. So the first step is kind of discovery, like the testing and the inspecting your home and like kind of getting your head around it. And that step could take you 3-4 months.
yeah,
Then the next step is getting into the protocols and all that. And that could take you a long time too.
yeah,
Like a solid year easily. And then the next section is sort of moving forward with your life and kind of leaving that behind and moving into the best thing you want next in your life. So yeah, it's definitely one that you could be just checking in on every
yeah,
now and then as you go
yeah.
through it.
So it might take you a year to get through the book, but take it little by little and get through it, and or binge read like I usually do, and then go back to go back through it
Yeah,
again.
you could read the whole thing and then, sticky note it and refer back to some things. I mean, unfortunately, people with mold illness, they're not always thinking super clearly. It's tough. It's tough to take in a lot of information. So I was mentioning you earlier, will be an audio book soon too. That may be helpful to just kind of hear it in the background so that you can remember, oh, I got to look into this or that. Because it is a lot, and I wish I could make it simpler. I just can't, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the big message here is don't avoid it because it seems hard. Like I think your book is going to make
Yes.
it's a great like you said, there's not another resource out there like it. So I think it's your go-to guide if you think you have mold, how to all of it, like how to get your home tested, you tested, recovery, all the things. So definitely we will put a link for the book in the show notes. So definitely go grab a copy. And just look into it some more, right?
Yeah, and if you're not quite ready for that step, you can look at our blog. We also, I don't know when this podcast is airing, but we have this free toxic mold masterclass too with interviews. It'll go on forever.
Okay,
So,
good.
yeah, just I encourage people to just take a little first step. Like even me, I wasn't up till 2 a.m. Googling. I just was still a mom and a business owner, and I just learned and implemented like what I could with the bandwidth that I had. And that's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Start where you're at, right? So, last final question I ask all my guests is what is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew 5, 10, even 15 years ago?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that I'm learning in my life journey as a human is just to be like unapologetically myself, to just be more of myself and be honest and make hard decisions even when it's not going to be what everyone else likes, and just like know my worth, because this is like we only have one life to live, and if you're trying to live it for someone else, it's never going to work. So it's talking about like kind of pushing through these little hard moments. Like I really have found it's better to have one hard moment than to like shrink who you really are and what you really want. So there's the eating and toxin part of life, but there's also just this energetic part of life that is so important as well for our health and happiness. So, yeah, that's my little thing I'm learning.
I love it. I love it. Now, where can the audience connect with you? Where can you be found? Where are your favorite places to hang out?
So my main site is my name, BridgitDanner.com. I do like to be on Instagram, which is Bridgit.Danner. And so I definitely would love for you to follow me there.
Excellent. I have to go see if I'm already following you. If not, I'm coming. I'm coming for you.
Awesome. I know. Likewise.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was so much fun, and I cannot wait to binge on your book in bite-sized pieces. And thanks again for doing what you do.
Thank you. It was so fun to meet you today.